Dear students, welcome you all to session 1 video of Cost and Management Accounting, 4th semester BCom, Anglo University. During the 4th semester BCom, the subject which you are going to study is Cost and Management Accounting, second, which is a continuation of the subject which you have studied in 3rd semester BCom. The 6 chapters which we are going to study during this semester are the first chapter, Overheads, the second chapter, Secondary Distribution of Overheads, third chapter, Absorption of Overheads, fourth chapter, Non-Integrated Accounting System, fifth chapter, Integrated Accounting System, and the sixth chapter, Reconciliation of Cost and Financial Accounts. These 6 chapters can be broadly classified into two, the first, second and third chapter being the first lot, and 4, 5 and 6th chapter the second lot. The first 3 chapters relate to overheads. The first chapter is about overheads, the basic concepts as well as primary distribution. The second chapter relates to secondary distribution of overheads, and the third chapter relates to the absorption of overheads to various cost centers or cost units based on various methods. The fourth chapter, Non-Integrated Accounting System, fifth chapter, Integrated Accounting System, and the sixth chapter, Reconciliation of Cost and Financial Accounts, relate to accounting for cost. Now, the fourth chapter, Non-Integrated Accounting System, here the different sets of accounts are maintained for cost as well as financial accounts. And in case of Integrated Accounting System, same sets of books are maintained for both cost and financial accounts. And the sixth chapter is Reconciliation of Cost and Financial Account, which arises in case of non-integrated accounting system, that is when separate sets of books are maintained for cost and financial accounts. So the 6 chapters which we are going to study during this 4th semester BCom can be classified into 2 parts actually. The first part, the first 3 chapters relating to overheads, and the second part, that is the remaining 3 chapters relating to the accounting for cost. So let us begin with the first chapter, that is relating to overheads. Now students, we know that the cost can be classified into 2 portions, that is direct and indirect. And this classification is based on the identifiability or traceability of the cost. So direct costs are those costs which can be easily, conveniently and economically identified with a particular cost center. For example, the material which is used in the manufacture of a product, we call it as direct materials. Similarly, the wages paid to the workers who are directly engaged in the manufacture of the product. So the direct cost can be further classified into direct material cost, direct labor cost, and direct expenses. And there are some costs which cannot be directly identified with a particular product or services. These costs cannot be easily or economically traced to a particular output. Now, for example, the power expenses. These expenses cannot be directly identified with the product in an economical way. So these indirect costs are known as overheads, and it's also known as on cost or burden or non-productive cost. Now we have factory on cost, which means factory overheads. Office on cost means office overheads. So these overheads are the aggregate of indirect materials, indirect labor, and indirect expenses, which means it is the sum total of all the indirect cost, that is indirect material cost, indirect labor cost, and indirect expenses. So overhead may be defined as the cost of indirect material, indirect labor, and such other expenses including services which cannot be conveniently be charged direct to specific cost units. Alternatively, overheads are all expenses other than the direct expenses. So all expenses incurred by the organization other than the direct expenses, so other than the direct materials, direct labor, and direct expenses, all the other expenses are classified as overheads. So overheads comprise indirect materials, indirect employee cost and indirect expenses which are not directly identifiable or allocable to a cost object in an economically feasible way. So these are the indirect portion of the total cost, which is actually the sum total of indirect material, indirect labor and the indirect expenses. So overhead cost cannot be directly allocated, but these costs have to be suitably apportioned and then it has to be absorbed. Thank you.